Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Denver, we need to talk. Because what just happened on day one of Broncos training camp should have every single one of you booking a Valentine's Day trip. Because that is when the Super Bowl is played, and after what we just witnessed, that trip might not be optional anymore. This is not hype. This is not wishful orange and blue delusion. This is an actual, certified, once-in-a-decade rarity, and there are receipts to prove every word of it. Here's the thing you have to understand about Broncos training camp, and really about NFL training camp in general. The offense always starts slow. Always. It's not a Broncos problem, it's a football problem. Defense is simple by comparison. You line up, you have a handful of calls, and you fly around and hit people. Remember that legendary no-fly zone defense that won Denver a Super Bowl by shutting down Cam Newton? Aqib Talib has talked about how that entire defense operated off of basically 10 plays by the time they got to that Super Bowl. 10. That's it. Offense is the opposite. Motions, protections, checks, footwork, timing with routes that have to be perfected to the exact step. It is infinitely more complicated, which is exactly why defense wins camp battles almost every single time, especially early. So when Broncos country has watched training camp openers over the years, we've seen the offense look like a mess more often than not. Go back to the Russell Wilson era. By day 5 of camp, reports had him throwing multiple interceptions in a single practice and looking completely out of sync, and that offense never actually got off the ground that season. Rewind further to when Peyton Manning first arrived in Denver, and even he dealt with rust and timing issues in those opening days before things clicked. Even last season, Quinn Miners stood at the podium and compared the Broncos offense to a train that takes forever to get up to speed. And once that train got rolling, it scored 33 points on one of the best defenses in football, the Buffalo Bills, in the Broncos' final meaningful game of the year. So now ask yourself, what happens if that train doesn't need to slowly build up steam this year? What happens if it just leaves the station already at full speed? Because that is exactly, and we mean exactly, what happened on day 1 of camp. And it has people who are usually the most cynical, most wait-and-see voices in Broncos media absolutely losing their minds. Tyler Polumbus, a name Broncos fans trust, came out and said this looked like one of the best opening days he has ever witnessed from an NFL offense, specifically because defenses are supposed to dominate this early. He pointed directly at new receiver Jaylen Waddle, saying Waddle was popping all over the field and that his slant route alone looks unstoppable. Ready to be featured from day 1 of the regular season. Ryan Edwards backed it up, saying it's been different, it's been a minute, then correcting himself to say it's been more like a decade since an offense has looked this sharp this early. A reference all the way back to the Peyton Manning years. And remember, even Manning's Broncos debut had rust. This one didn't. Then there's Benjamin Albright, a reporter who is not exactly known for handing out compliments for free. Even he admitted that despite it being stupid early and the players still being in shorts, the offense looked smooth. And one specific detail stood out to him: tight end Evan Ingram is getting heavily involved in this new up-tempo scheme. Let's sit on that Evan Ingram piece for a second, because it might be the sneakiest big story of the entire offseason. Remember, this is a tight end who chose Denver last year over the Los Angeles Chargers, even though the Chargers almost certainly could have paid him more. We saw what the Chargers just handed to tight end David Njoku. And it's safe to assume a similar type of offer was on the table for Ingram before he picked Denver anyway. Why? Because of his relationship with new play caller Davis Webb. That connection appears to be paying off immediately, with reports of Ingram getting targeted over and over in these early camp reps. Now look at where the Broncos tight end room actually ranked last season across the league. 26th in receiving yards, 19th in receptions, a brutal 28th in touchdowns, and 18th in targets. If that unit jumps from bottom tier to even a respectable middle or upper middle tier, this offense gets a whole new dimension. And there are two clear reasons this unlock might be happening. First, Ingram was banged up for a chunk of last season and wasn't full strength. Second, and maybe more importantly, Jaylen Waddle is about to suck so much defensive attention out wide that the middle of the field is going to be wide open. Think about trying to game plan for Courtland Sutton and Jaylen Waddle at the same time. You cannot double both. Something has to give, and that something is going to be the middle of the field, exactly where quarterback Bo Nix is entering year 3 of this offense and reportedly ready to grow into using that space like never before. And about Bo Nix. This man has a newborn baby at home. He should, by every logical measure, be running on fumes and sleepless nights right now. Instead, by every account from camp, he looked night and day different and sharper than he did even in a training camp performance last year that plenty of people already thought was pretty solid. Fans and former quarterbacks alike are saying Nix looks the most comfortable and accurate in the pocket that he has ever looked, and slow-motion replays are backing it up, showing tight. Accurate throws hitting Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin right in stride on slant routes. A deep dive through an hour of camp footage and social media reactions turned up not a single dropped pass. Not one. Even the people who love to nitpick this roster are saying the offense looks completely legitimate. Then there's the wrinkle nobody in Denver has had in years: Jaylen Waddle himself. This is a receiver who plays with the ball in his hands like very few Broncos have ever done. There are already comparisons floating around to watching a young Jamar Chase, where quarterbacks admit the throw wasn't even perfect, but the receiver just finds a way to bring it in and turn a mediocre ball into a big gain. Reports out of camp describe Waddle tracking a pass that looked like it was sailing over his head, only for him to fall backward and somehow secure it against his chest. Another rep had him going up and backhanding a pass one-handed. Broncos fans have not had a receiver who creates like this since Jerry Jeudy, and unlike Jeudy, whose Denver career never quite lived up to the flashes. The real historical comparison here might be Demaryius Thomas, a receiver defenses know is getting the ball, double-team him anyway, and he still comes down with it and turns upfield toward the end zone. And it wasn't just about the flash plays either. In 7-on-7 work against the starting defense, meaning Pat Surtain and Riley Moss, two of the best defensive backs in the league, Bo Nix still hit Courtland Sutton for a 20-yard completion and then immediately followed it up with a 30-yard strike to Pat Bryant. Against that level of competition, on day one, this offense already looks dangerous. And if you want a fun bit of trivia to file away, Jaylen Waddle has historically torched AFC East defenses in his career, which should have Denver fans salivating over matchups against the New England Patriots and a Christmas Day showdown against the Buffalo Bills. Now let's get into the JK Dobbins news, because this is the story a lot of Broncos fans have been side-eyeing all offseason. There has been real skepticism in Broncos country about the 2-year deal given to Dobbins, with plenty of fans convinced he won't make it through all 17 games given his injury history. But listening to head coach Sean Payton speak about him changes the picture. Payton made it clear that both he and the ownership group, including George Payton, were fully bought in on Dobbins specifically, not settling for him as a plan B after missing out on a bigger name in free agency. Payton went further, crediting a real chunk of last season's 14 wins directly to Dobbins' presence in the backfield, and said he views last year's hip drop tackle injury as a fluke rather than a sign of things to come. Then, Dobbins himself doubled down in the most Dobbins way possible. He pinky promised, on the record, that he will play all 17 games this season. Think about that for a second. There is zero reason to make a claim like that publicly unless you genuinely believe it. When asked what's different this time, he explained he's been putting serious work into his flexibility, saying he feels as loose and flexible as he did when he was younger, essentially promising to be a human rubber band out there. And when Broncos PR staff tried to wrap up his press conference, Dobbins refused to leave the podium, saying he had missed the media and the fans too much, and continued talking for several more minutes about how being a Denver Bronco feels like home. despite being drafted by Baltimore and later playing for the Chargers. Now zoom out and look at the bigger picture, because this is where it gets almost hard to believe. Last season, the Broncos didn't rank top 10 in a single meaningful offensive efficiency metric. Third down conversion rate, EPA, all of it hovered in the middle of the pack or worse. The Broncos punted the fourth most of any team in the entire NFL last season. Fourth most. And this is a defense, remember, that has shown no signs of slipping even after losing a piece like John Franklin Myers, with the coaching staff expressing real confidence in the committee stepping up to replace him. So if this offense is truly arriving fully formed instead of needing half a season to find its footing, the Broncos are suddenly a completely different team. And here's a wrinkle that should terrify the rest of the AFC. Nobody around the league has a single piece of tape on how new play caller Davis Webb actually calls a game. Week 1 sends the Broncos into a hostile Arrowhead Stadium environment. And while that is never an easy building to play in, Andy Reid and that Kansas City coaching staff have absolutely no film to prepare from when it comes to Davis Webb's tendencies. Bo Nix is playing with a chip on his shoulder from everyone who has doubted him. And defensive coordinators across the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season are going to be scrambling blind, unable to distinguish Davis Webb's play calling from what Sean Payton ran in years past. That is a real, tangible advantage, and it lines up perfectly with an offense that already looks more explosive right out of the gate than it did at any point last season. Of course, not everyone was thrilled about how Day 1 played out. Linebacker Alex Singleton, only half joking, pointed out that the fans in attendance were only cheering for the offense, a not-so-subtle reminder that defense still needs to hold up its end of the bargain for this team to go where it wants to go this season. And that's a completely fair point. But there's real reason to believe the fireworks from Day 1 weren't a sign of the defense slipping. They were a sign the offense finally stepped up to a completely new level. And then, to cap off an already stacked news day, there's the salary cap update. The restructure of offensive lineman Ben Powers' contract officially saved the Denver Broncos $8 million in cap space. That brings Denver's total cap space up to $37 million, which is more than enough breathing room to extend key pieces of this roster. One name that keeps coming up in that conversation is Marvin Mims. And after hearing Sean Payton praise how Mims has stepped up every single time his number has been called, followed by Mims himself catching a 50-yard touchdown at camp today, it feels like a long-term extension for him in Denver is closer than ever. So let's recap the day, because it is genuinely one of the best opening days of training camp Broncos fans have seen in years. Bo Nix looking sharper and more comfortable than ever, even running on no sleep with a newborn at home. Jaylen Waddle looking like the most dynamic playmaker this receiver room has had in a decade. Evan Ingram poised for a breakout after a down year marred by injury. Cortland Sutton and Pat Bryant hauling in big completions against a starting caliber secondary. JK Dobbins' pinky promising all 17 games and backing it with real conviction. $37 million in cap space and a Marvin Mims extension looking more likely by the day. And an offensive identity under Davis Webb that literally no defensive coordinator in this league has any tape on yet. The offense winning training camp on Day 1 almost never happens. It happened today. So mark your calendars for February 14th, because that is when the Super Bowl kicks off. And after everything laid out here, there is a real case to believe the Denver Broncos are going to be playing in it. If this got you fired up, do not scroll past without smashing that like button. Drop your thoughts down in the comments, because we want to hear exactly how you think this offense looks heading into the season, and make sure you are subscribed to Broncos so you never miss a single update out of training camp. There is a lot more coming, so stick around, because this Broncos season is shaping up